All right, good morning, everyone. Today is the February 17th, 2021 meeting of the Lextran Board of Directors. My name is Jill Barnett. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, state of emergency, and Governor Beshear's executive orders regarding social distancing, this meeting of the Lextran Board of Directors will be held via video teleconference pursuant to Senate 150 as signed by the Governor on March 30th, 2020, and Attorney General Opinion 20-05 and in accordance with KRS 61.826 because it is not feasible to offer a primary physical location for the meeting. Mr. Chair, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, and good morning, everybody. I'll get us started by quickly just checking the roll. Adrian, we know, is out. George?
Present.
Rick? Hopefully see Rick in a bit. Harding?
Here.
Jamie?
Here.
And did I miss anyone? I'm here. We don't have quorum, so we'll hold on approving the minutes till we get that number. For now, we'll ask if there's any public comment on agenda items. If there isn't any, I don't have much for a chair's report. I did want to just flag that we do have a subcommittee looking at the management contract RFP right now, taking a first stab at getting questions out there and submitting some potential edits. And so if you have any, for folks who are not on that subcommittee, if you have questions or particular interest in mine, please shoot those to me by email, and we'll make sure to take those under consideration. The plan is to try to get that RFP out in March. Any Jamie, George, anything you want to add there? I should say Jamie, the committee consists of Jamie, George, and Adrian.
I don't have anything to add.
Okay. With that, we can move to the presentation on the Necklaceville Road project.
Okay, great. I'll take a second to introduce the project and our speakers today. Imagine Necklaceville Road came from, or was born out of the comprehensive plan Imagine Lexington. And as part of that comprehensive plan, we found that development along the arterials, focus on the arterials and increased density was something that the community is interested in. We've taken that with the Imagine Necklaceville Road sort of to a new step to have a combined land use transportation study. So we're going to be hearing about more than just transit and transportation, but also land use, and the two are really interrelated with one another. So this is a very exciting study. I'm very pleased with what we've seen so far. We have with us today our consultant team from WSP, Tim Reynolds and Ann Warnick. They're going to be giving the presentation, and if we can, Alan, get Tim's presentation going here. And Tim, you should be getting control.
I'm sorry. Hey, Fred, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I think I was on mute. Kenzie Gleason is also on the call, and wondering if Kenzie would like to make any opening comments about the project in this presentation.
Sure.
I think that Fred provided a great introduction. I'm Kenzie Gleason. I'm here representing the Division of Planning, our long-range transportation planning section in the NPO. And we're very excited to be sharing some of the results and outcomes of this year-long project with you today, and very much look forward to working with you in the future to implement the recommendations of this plan. And with that, I'll let Tim lead us through the conversation.
Okay. What I'm trying to do is I thought I gained control, but it seems to be advancing on its own. If we can get back to the title slide. I'm not sure how to accomplish that. There we go. Anyway, we're at the title slide. My name is Tim Reynolds. I'm with WSP. I'm based out in Cincinnati. And my colleague Ann Warnick is on the call. Yeah, we're going to have to find a way to stop the advancement of this because I'm not advancing myself.
Any scroll on your wheel will advance it.
Okay, what I'm trying to do is not advance it because it's doing it automatically. I apologize, but it's you know, it's on your system, so trying to figure that out.
It might be whoever has it open. I think it's a setting that you have to change in your PowerPoint to not have it automatically advance slides. So I'm not sure whose machine it's running from, but that might be the.
Tim, do you have this open on your computer that you can screen share?
I do.
Let's see if we can.
We can do that, sure. Okay, I'm going to click on share content. Can you all see the presentation there?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. All right, well, with any kind of luck, this will go pretty well. But again, thanks for being with us on this. Very much appreciate Fred's assistance throughout the last year on this project, along with several others in the community, our client, and many others. It's been a great project, and we are privileged to have been working for you all on the Imagine Necklaceville Road study. We've been on this project for a little over a year. It's gone a little bit longer than we had originally anticipated, but given COVID, I think everybody's schedules have been disrupted a little bit. So again, we appreciate everyone bearing with us. It's because we had to adjust, particularly in terms of how we accomplished public involvement. And let's see, there we go. We have presented to you several months ago in terms of what this project is all about. More or less, it was an introductory presentation, but this is an outgrowth of Imagine Lexington, which is the region's comprehensive plan. And one of the major recommendations of that plan, there is an automatic thing going on here, was to concentrate on Necklaceville Road as a starter, as a good way of implementing a lot of the goals and objectives of Imagine Lexington, specifically looking at high density development, looking at the concept of bus rapid transit and what it would take to support that in terms of development and redevelopment along the corridor, including the encouragement of transit-oriented development, TOD, by increasing density along the corridors. Lexington is obviously in a unique position given the urban service boundary where there's a lot of development farther away, but some opportunities to enhance density and strengthen the corridor along the way, Necklaceville Road being Lexington's prime corridor. We did a lot of outreach, as I imagined. It's hard to believe that it was a little less than a year ago in March where we had our first major public meeting down at Lexington Green. A week later, everything started shutting down, so that changed a lot for everyone. But we've been able to maintain what we feel is a very high level of community involvement throughout the project. And our second round of public meetings was done a few months ago virtually. We've also done public surveys and a high level of stakeholder engagement. A lot of the folks such as UK, the developers, the owners of the malls and shopping centers along the way, for example. We got a lot of feedback in terms of the entire corridor, from a traffic, from an urban design, from a transit point of view. And a lot of people, in terms of when they zeroed in on transit, would like to see more convenient stops and routes and more simplified, convenient service. They said, we asked the question, so if all those improvements were made, would you be more inclined to use public transit? And pretty close to half said they would agree, which we feel, though, despite, the disagree that you see on the pie chart here, that, to get over 40% to say, yeah, I would be more inclined to use transit out of the general population, we consider very much of a positive. The plan components are complete streets, bus rapid transit, and transit-oriented development. And I'll start off with bus rapid transit, given that here we are at Lextran. Again, bus rapid transit is out there. We have a concept for a BRT line that's 8 miles long, 12 stations from downtown all the way out to Brandon Crossing. No detours except to get into Fayette Mall, park and ride at the lower end. We estimate that the travel time compared to the Route 5 to the mall would be cut by about 25%. In terms of the treatments, would buses be running in their own lanes or mixed traffic? It would be a mix of treatments depending on the nature and the traffic and the scale of the corridor itself. And I'll go through those in a few minutes as we take a little tour of the BRT concept in a moment. Every 15-minute service. We're contemplating that Route 5, the existing Necklaceville Road route, would continue to operate, but at a reduced level of service so that folks who cannot get to just these stations here, the 12 stations, but still want to rely upon that all stop service would have that opportunity. When we're talking about stations, Lextran has a great heritage in terms of working with the community on station or shelter design. And a BRT concept along Necklaceville Road will provide that and take it to the next level. Again, stations would be spaced from a quarter to about 1 mile spacing. The structures would be somewhat uniform, but also respond to some of the neighborhood conditions. This is something that remains to be seen exactly how they would be designed, but it's a great opportunity to combine what people are looking for when they're riding the bus in terms of passenger amenities and what the surrounding neighborhoods would like to see in terms of design, landscaping, lighting, and so on and so forth. One of the concepts that we're looking at to how do we make the bus go faster is to use in key sections what we call center running, bi-directional bus only lanes. It's a lot to digest. This is something that, among other places, Indianapolis is pioneering, where there are some areas where they just don't have the capacity to take 2 lanes of traffic, but they do with one, whether they modify on-street parking or whatever. You can use these for relatively short sections because you can't have 2 buses heading in opposing directions at the same time. But in this case, if a bus needs to wait a moment for a bus to pass, that would be accomplished at a station where there would be a passing lane. But this is really proven just up the road in Indianapolis to be a very effective way of getting the bus running a little bit faster in some neighborhoods where we're just not able to take 2 lanes of traffic away. And again, given that Necklaceville Road has the opportunity with the current center left, the center reversible lane, that is, got a lot of issues out there, that there are opportunities in some key locations that I'll talk about in a moment to use this particular treatment, but not along the entire way. Another treatment.
Dan, can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, if you can, sure.
Yeah, I'm just curious how many buses would be on that 8 mile stretch at the same time?
There would be about 4 buses at any given time.
Okay, thank you.
So, in terms of the schedule, if we're running it about every 15 minutes, at some point, a southbound bus is going to cross a northbound bus. Now, most of the alignment does not have this type of treatment, as we'll talk about shortly. But should they, meet, they would be able to pause at this, you can see the diagram of the station where we have flares out from a single lane, bi-directional reversible to 2 lanes. And that would allow, the passing of the buses, as well as BRT lines tend to be controlled by their own signals as well. So from a safety point of view, it's done at a very high level. And as Indianapolis has been demonstrating very successfully as well. Another treatment in other sections we call bat lanes. This is out there in dozens of systems across the country. It's really not an exclusive lane by any means, but it's looking at giving buses priority in the curb, the right side curb lane, and discouraging through traffic from using those lanes, but still allowing motorists to take right turns into businesses and homes and apartments and doctors' offices and such, as well as to take right lanes out. But once they're in those lanes, they're going to be encouraged to get into the next lane over, the through traffic lane. You can designate this for the entire day or designate it during peak periods. It's controlled more by signs, whether on the side or perhaps overhead or paint on the pavement than anything else. So it's, again, not an exclusive lane, but it does tend to provide the bus a little faster trip. It still maintains the very necessary capacity for traffic in the area, as well as access for motorists and deliveries and stuff into everything that has a curb cut on the right side of the street. Then we look at complete streets. You know, there's sort of a three-legged stool I mentioned: bus rapid transit, complete streets, and transit-oriented development. They all work together to accomplish the goals of the project. Complete streets is a concept that looks at all the ingredients of what uses a street. In other words, let's not just move motor vehicles, cars, and trucks, but how do we make it more of a people place where we're moving pedestrians and cyclists and buses and hence traffic into a more pleasant, a more safe, and a more multimodal type corridor. And here's some examples in terms of alongside traffic, looking at kind of shared use paths with that accommodate both bikes and pedestrians. In terms of access management, Ann Warnick is our lead person on the project. And so if you have any questions, she'll be the best one to answer. But we're looking at some, maybe consolidating some curb cuts, of which there are hundreds and hundreds along the corridor, and changing some intersections, such as restricting some left turns and U-turns at some key areas to manage and improve traffic flow. And to maximize the right-of-way of Necklaceville Road in a much more effective manner than what we see, particularly at the southern end today. And then finally, the third leg of the three-legged stool is looking at transit-oriented development. We were tasked with looking at what we call catalyst sites. These are some areas, and we looked at a number of them from downtown all the way to the lower end at Brandon Crossing, to develop some ideas and concepts. These are not proposals at this point, but they're designed to show what are the possibilities of looking at some redevelopment. And I'd like to take a moment just to look at one of those three, which is Fayette Mall, which we all know has been in transition, definitely will continue to be in transition. Is surrounded by acres of parking set way back from Necklaceville Road and the surrounding streets. Not pedestrian friendly, not transit friendly. This is the before picture. We also have the adjacent shopping centers, the plaza at Fayette Mall. Currently, Lextran's Route 5 diverts a little bit off Necklaceville Road and gets into the territory with a bus stop that was actually two shelters that allow people a much better connection rather than having to actually cross Necklaceville Road. Although today, if you want to go back into downtown, your best bet is to ride all the way down to the Walmart and back. But still, it shows that Lextran's commitment to providing people, its customers, with improved access to places that they want to go, whether they shop or work or have other activities. So when we look at some of the concepts, and one of our team members, MKSK, and we have one of the representatives on the call, looked at, well, in terms of fulfilling the goals of both Imagine Lexington and Imagine Necklaceville Road, these are, again, some ideas. We had a number of calls, conference calls with the mall developer, the mall owner, who is open to some ideas, knowing that things are easier said than done to accomplish, but we're looking at over the long haul, what are some of the ideas to sort of integrate this particular facility, as it's inevitably going to evolve anyway, and integrate it better into the streetscape, into Necklaceville Road corridor as a whole, and to help as a great catalyst site to implement the goals of increased density and more pedestrian and transit friendly type of development in Lexington, and specifically along Necklaceville Road. So I know this is an awful lot to look at. Again, it is not a proposal at this point. It's a concept that the owner has seen, and we've worked with them to modify perhaps a mix of housing, maybe ground floor retail, office space, green space, and such. The other catalyst sites are further south at Emmert Mall, Emmert Farm, and then a little bit further north at Crossroads, just south of New Circle Road. So in terms of what would this look like for BRT, pulling together all of these treatments, all of these concepts together, what would a BRT line, which is sort of what ties it all together, look like? I'm going through a few segments, starting downtown and working my way south. We have a one-way street pattern here. So southbound on South Upper Street, northbound on South Limestone Street, a station at the Transit Center, and then station southbound at the Target store on the left side, and then inbound, northbound at Good Samaritan. Again, we're looking at not necessarily exclusive lanes for transit because the roadways are narrow, but potentially things like signal priority and some of the complete streets and access management treatments, such as improved urban intersection upgrades and parking protected bike lanes as well. The next segment goes through the UK campus for the most part. This is where we would recommend the center running bi-directional bus only lane through this section of the BRT line, as we showed with some of the pictures from Indianapolis, with stations at the campus itself and then a little bit further to the south at UK Health. The specific locations, should this line be developed, taken to the next level, those can change a little bit. I mean, things, in terms of from a traffic point of view, from a passenger point of view, from the stakeholders along the way point of view, they may shift a block or so, but those are the two key areas where ridership would be at its highest. It currently is pretty good there right now. And again, other treatments, not just for buses, we're looking at a shared use path that accommodates pedestrians, cyclists, and others along both sides of Necklaceville Road, and some changes to the design of intersections. Now we're a little bit to the south of the UK campus. We kind of loosely call it the neighborhoods. It's also where Baptist Health is. At this point, the line would segue into a mixed traffic mode. Again, it's the nature of how much traffic there is currently and projected along Necklaceville Road at this segment, and what we're able to take or what we're able to not take for buses. And in this case, we're unable to continue that bus only reversible lane in the center, but we have the buses still running in mixed traffic, but with signal priority to help maintain schedules. Stations would be located at Kroger Field, which could start off as mainly an events or sporting events only type of station, and then definitely at Baptist Health as well. The next segment from this to the south transitions very much one of the characteristics of Necklaceville Road is its diversity of types of development and how it will radically change from one type of development, say residential and old traditional residential, to strip commercial, such as what we're finding just south of Southland Drive. So we have stations at Southland Drive and Pasadena Drive. This is the segment where we're proposing the use of bat lanes, where the bus is in the curb lane, has the priority. Motorists are discouraged from driving through that, but still have the ability to access businesses and homes and such in that particular lane. Along with the BRT, more intersection treatments, and again, looking at upgrades to bike and pedestrian access, including the shared use path. The next segment, we get into completely different territory south of Manawar Boulevard. This is where our catalyst sites are, at South Park and Crossroads, at Lexington Mall, Fayette Mall, and a little bit further south, potentially at Emerald Farm. Again, we are extending the bat lane concept through this area. Back up a little bit. Stations at the major retail facilities, South Park and Lexington Green, across from each other. Fayette Mall, it would go in, and then Walmart and the Summit. Right now on Route 5 outside of downtown, Walmart is the #1 bus stop. It's very important to make sure that we serve it as conveniently, if not more conveniently, than the current Route 5 does. And then finally, we take it to Brandon Crossing with the option, should this line be implemented at some point, would it be able to be extended even further to the south if there was a need, if there was a market developing for that? And yes, it can. What we're conceptually recommending here would be a park and ride facility at the tail end at Brandon Crossing. And that opens up the territory where people, how do they access bus transit now? Either they walk, they may ride a bike, or they take another bus and make the transfer. But this would also allow people from the south to access it by the car. Again, we're stressing that this is not an express bus, but by having a park and ride facility there does, again, expand the reach of a potential BRT line on Necklaceville Road to more customers. Again, stations at Emerald Farm and, as I mentioned, at Brandon Crossing, a number of access changes in terms of following the US 27 Access Management Plan, which has already been in the works. And for BRT, this is a place where we would be in mixed traffic. Given the volume of traffic in this area, we're unable to get any kind of exclusive lane or priority treatment, but the potential to run on the shoulder as well. So again, it is a mix of treatments, but they all connect together through signals, through the 12 stations, through regular 15-minute service, running at about 25% faster, we estimate, than the current Route 5. when we look at next steps, and it's still a work in progress, we're almost done with the project, and we're identifying a number of steps in the short term, in the long term, and about funding. So, in terms of where do we go from here in terms of BRT specifically, we do want to stress that it's just not, in a silo that, okay, Lextran will do BRT and that's it. It all kind of works together with looking at how do we encourage more transit-oriented development or pedestrian-friendly, more dense development at key locations, using that BRT as sort of the framework at station locations to apply some of those higher density opportunities there, as well as some complete street treatments. They all work together. From a BRT point of view, the immediate steps would be to develop a detailed capital and operating cost estimate, and to do a very detailed modeling of what the estimated ridership would be. We're in a different era right now, and how we recover from COVID, we don't know. But we're kind of looking both in the past as well as in the future to how would we estimate what the service requirements would be, and what the estimated ridership would be. All that kind of comes together, costs and ridership, and the plan itself is for Lextran and the community as a whole to help determine, so what is, the level of local support? Is this something that Lextran and the Planning Commission and the community at large generate enough support to advance a project? Here we have a pretty well detailed, but still conceptual project. But again, it needs demonstrated public support to advance it. We would want to do an analysis, what we call a micro simulation. So exactly what the implications are of the bat lane concept or the center running bi-directional bus only lane concept. Potentially then, if it continues to advance, you work on preliminary designs and more advanced designs, work with the Federal Transit Administration to potentially apply for what's called the small starts funding. A lot of that is contingent upon local funding. Again, we're looking at scaling back the Route 5 to about an hour. So a lot of those operating resources can be put back into, say, a BRT line, but still we know it'll be an additional cost. There are a number of other steps that are not just Lextran's purview to take the entire Imagine Necklaceville Road concept project to the next stages of implementation. It's to present the plan, which is happening in the next few weeks, to the Planning Commission and the Transportation Policy Committee for formal adoption. Conduct a follow-up process to develop development standards. One of the tasks that we've had on this project is to look at, from a regulatory point of view, what needs to change or be added to accomplish all of this. To partner with the MPO and others in the state for funding for transportation improvements, whether large scale or even on an incremental basis. Look at design standards. Those are among the next steps. There's quite a few that whether it's Lextran and the BRT line or Lextran and the BRT line combined with looking at a more complete streets focus for Necklaceville Road, improved access management, denser development that creates a more vibrant corridor that's more people-centric and not necessarily auto-centric. So that's in 15 or 20 minutes or so an overview of what we've been doing for the last year, working with you all through Fred. And again, as I mentioned, very much appreciate his assistance and support throughout the last year, as well as from the Planning Commission and Kenzie and her team as well. So I'm available, as well as some of the other members of our project team who are online for questions. Again, thank you very much for the opportunity to discuss and present the Necklaceville Road plan.
Thank you, Tim.
Tim, thank you. This is Christian. I want to first of all thank you for this presentation, and I don't want to speak for the entire board, though I think we might share the sentiment that just being excited about this project. I used to live right off Necklaceville Road, so I know that it can be a bear, and so this idea of even transit-oriented development and considering the ways that we can improve not only Lextran service along the corridor, but also there might be this broader effort to just make Necklaceville Road a little bit more manageable. I have just two quick questions, and then I invite others to jump in. The first is for Lextran. so I'm wondering if there are, as you all have seen the development of this plan, are there decision points for this board, or what are the set of considerations that the Lextran team is considering as they, as we look toward the execution? It seems like BRT is the first. The bus rapid transit is a big bucket for us to be thinking about. But I'm just what are the decision points or the considerations on the Lextran side in this plan? Maybe that's Fred or
Fred, do you want to take that, or do you want me to?
I'll take the first stab, and you can fill in the blanks for. I think there's going to be several decision points along the way. As Tim mentioned, we're going to need to do a deeper dive of analysis of how, what the ridership is going to look like, what's the operating cost going to look like, what is it going to look like on our staff to actually put this thing into motion. There's going to be a capital cost that we need to think about. So again, this is just a concept. Putting this into reality, the board's going to be very, very much involved. Now, to say what this plan needs to give us is that public support that the public can get behind and say this is what we want, but it has to come with that land use component as well. We need both of those things to work together. We did focus more on the transportation component here, but there is that land use component that's in this plan that's very interesting and very good to look at. A quick pitch, imaginenecklacevilleroad.com. That's a great resource to go and read more about what's been going on here. But both of those things need to work together. And as the corridor itself continues to evolve, this board is going to be have those moments to build this out. Again, it could be the case that we don't go full BRT out of the bat. We take some of these ideas and we put them in more of a piecemeal and a stepwise manner. If we go that route, again, the board's going to have tremendous amount of input as we go.
Thank you for that, Fred. One thing that I would also add on to Fred's comments is that I think it's really good that this is a fully more fleshed out plan rather than us reacting as Necklaceville Road develops, which is what tends to happen for transit. Properties and developments occur, and as more people come to those areas, transit is kind of added on in a piecemeal fashion. So it's really good, I believe, that this is being thought of more comprehensively. One decision point or consideration I would say that this board needs to think about, and staff, is do we want to go do we want our focus for transit to be on ridership, or do we want our focus for transit to be on coverage? And what I mean by that is when your focus is on coverage, you're giving a little bit of service to almost everyone. So they might have service, but it might not be very effective. The bus might come once every 90 minutes or once every 75 minutes. Whereas if your focus is on ridership, you're putting really high frequency service there in an effort to make it easy and convenient for people to get to. They might have to walk a little further than they do now, but they know that bus is going to come every 8 to 10 to 15 minutes. So that is also a consideration that I would add that the board might want to think about long term.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. Well, my question is, these BRT lanes, will they supplant or replace lanes currently used by automobile traffic now?
To an extent. Ann, could you address that issue?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So the BAT lanes they are bus access, so it's bus only, but it's also right turning vehicles. And so currently in those sections, there's a lot of development and a lot of people that are turning right. So you're still getting some capacity for vehicular traffic. But basically, the traffic that's already currently slowing down through traffic because there's so many right turners, that's you're just giving them their own lane, and then that makes room for the bus. Now, that being said, the great thing about BAT lanes is that they're very flexible, and so they don't require additional infrastructure more than just signage and striping. So this isn't something that it's like we're going to spend a lot of money to do, and if it turns out that like, oh, this doesn't, this is killing traffic, it's easily undone, first of all. So I always like to say, like, this isn't like a permanent thing. It's very much something that is flexible. It can also be done by time of day. There's places where they have bat lanes just during the peak periods, for example, when you want to get the buses in and out, or you could even do it in the off peak. So there's flexibility within that, and it's something, and again, it's something that the beauty of BRT is that it can be built upon. And so this, so while we're saying this is the ultimate goal to get there, with the goal being that you will hopefully, as we improve and increase service and the land use changes so that there are more people that are living and working and using the corridor in ways that are not just driving through it, that hopefully the mode shift will change such that that lane isn't as necessary for vehicles as well. So it's not something that you have to do right off the bat. It's something that you can layer in when the ridership and the mode shift and the land use, when all of that shifts, as the plan comes to fruition. So that's kind of the overview of how that works, and that the reason that we put it in there is because, we do think that if Necklaceville Road redevelops in the way that we're hoping for it to, and if we also, I guess another thing to mention that we didn't spend a whole lot of time going through, but there's going to be vehicular improvements that correspond with this, with the land use or vehicular infrastructure improvements. And so we're looking at, Tim kind of touched on some of the innovative intersections, looking at ways that we can reduce left turn phases and hopefully increase throughput capacity along Necklaceville Road. So again, those types of improvements will be done in conjunction with this. So the goal being that we can increase capacity of through traffic on Necklaceville Road without actually having to widen the footprint. And then by doing that, that will allow for these bat lanes to come in. So it's all very much dependent upon one another. It's not just, we want to make sure people know it's not just like, oh, we're taking a lane of traffic and giving it to buses. It's much more comprehensive than that. But the ultimate goal is that lane, that we can do that in a way that doesn't negatively impact traffic, vehicular traffic driving through Necklaceville Road, but that can be a benefit for the buses as well as for the access to properties. So
could you touch on the reversible lane?
I'm trying to understand here.
I'm sorry.
Looking at your diagram, I could see, aside from the right turn business, but there's much of the whole corridor has this BRT, which I assume replaces lanes now used for vehicular traffic. Is that correct?
So it depends on the section. So like through the UK section, for example, we're not replacing any traffic lanes.
But in some places, yes?
Yeah, so from Southland Drive to Manawar is where we are proposing taking some of those right side lanes and making them those bat lanes, yes. And so we would, and in order to do that, and in order to do some of the vehicular improvements that we would need to do, we would have to get rid of that reversible lane. And so, and this is the other piece of it.
All right.
Does that make sense?
Just increase congestion?
Well, and so that's the piece that we are trying, that is going to need a much deeper dive into the traffic. So we've done kind of some initial back of the napkin math based on traffic volumes that we were able to get from the city's traffic engineering department. And we can, but when we just take away the reversible lane, so without doing anything else, just taking away the reversible lane, it does increase congestion in that peak direction where you had that extra lane, but it reduces it even more so in the off-peak direction that was losing the lane, so that your net traffic, so that as a whole in both directions, traffic is actually, again, this is just kind of high level. It looks like traffic overall is improved by getting rid of the reversible lane. So we kind of started out with that as like is this even feasible? Is it going to kill us to take away the reversible lane? And doing that traffic analysis, the answer is no, it's not going to kill us. And so then we started
I'm sorry. I find that hard to believe.
I think we have to think about this as moving people, not moving cars.
Yes.
We're increasing capacity because we're able to put more buses and more bus capacity. And as the corridor densifies, that ridership goes up and up, and the number of cars on the road goes down.
You are forcing people out of their cars and into buses.
Not forcing anybody to do anything, Rick.
Yeah, they still have a choice.
If they can't use, if they can't get down the road with their car because it's so congested, then I guess they will throw in the towel and use a bus, maybe.
Well, and the goal isn't to make it so that they can't travel via car at all. We do want to make it just as attractive, if not more attractive.
Or difficult to use a car.
But yeah, but we don't want to make it impossible. And that's the other thing where this piece with the unconventional intersections is really a key piece of this. And again, this is something that for the scope of this particular study, we couldn't get into the weeds of, you know, how that's going to look exactly. But we took some models that we worked with the city's traffic engineering group, and we just kind of put some, you know, some test concepts of what happens if we, you know, eliminate left turn phases. And so we're able to give more green time to the through movements along Necklaceville Road. What happens if we do some access management and reduce the friction of turning movements? What happens if we do these types of things to improve vehicular capacity, so that if we can combine that along with more people using the bus because it is more convenient, then hopefully we can get kind of this equilibrium of the people that still need to drive their cars can drive their cars. But for the people that now, again, because we're changing the land use component, and now we have people that, you know, might work at UK or work at Baptist Health can now live along the corridor and, you know, these mixed use developments, that they have this great option that they don't have to get in their car and drive there now. So again, it's a whole shift of the entire thing. And so we're not going to just go out there and take a lane of traffic when it's going to completely just hose traffic. Like that's not the plan, is not to just remove lanes of traffic in each direction before the corridor can really handle that. It's more of we're working towards this with, you know, capacity improvements to vehicular traffic, changes to land use so that people, you know, live on the corridor and can easily take transit. That's kind of the goal, is so it will build upon one another. So hopefully that, again, I don't want to like kick the can down the road and be like, oh, we need to look into it further, but really we do need to look into it further to really look at, you know, traffic projections, traffic growth, and kind of get into the details of what are those capacity improvements we need to make at intersections to make this work. Because there is a piece of it that's what has to happen.
And I think what Rick, I think the point that Rick is making is a good one, in the sense that it gives us a really good sense of the questions that the general public is going to ask about this plan. I'm very supportive of this. I think it is literally why I wanted to join this board. So I want to help us see transit as a key component of the future development of Lexington. But these are the kinds of questions you'll get because people are very concerned about the level of traffic on Necklaceville Road. Even though I think if you go to any large city, the traffic would pale in comparison. That Necklaceville Road's traffic is not really as bad as people here think it is. So where I'm getting at this is, are there good examples that we can offer the public of a road like Necklaceville Road that is inefficiently designed, that is really only about individual vehicle throughput, and has been able to, a city has been able to change that paradigm of a road whose identity is so clearly fixed in people's minds? Are there good examples that you can offer and help tell that story? Because I think the nature of Lexington is one where having seen it be done successfully somewhere else will really help get the public on board.
Mr. Howell, the ultimate example is up 71 in Cleveland, which is called the Health Line. And that's called that because of Cleveland Clinic and the University Hospital bought the naming rights several years ago. And it's a similar length, maybe a little bit shorter line that runs on Euclid Avenue, which is their main street, from downtown out to the area called University Circle, Case Western Reserve, those hospitals I talked about, the museum, a lot of activity centers. And it's not only a good example of a transformative BRT line, but it's a great example of what the Planning Commission and others through Imagine Lexington and Imagine Necklaceville Road have been trying to accomplish. That it's just not a transit project, it's just not a roadway project, it's just not a complete streets project, but it's working together to accomplish a much more vibrant corridor that moves a lot more people and adds capacity in one of their key corridors. So that's the first one that I would talk to. I mean, there's no identical parallel examples. One of the challenges of Necklaceville Road is that there is no parallel street where people, okay, I'm just going to shift to, a quarter mile away, another street that heads in that same direction. Lexington is a very radial type of street network as well as bus network that doesn't allow that. But I think Cleveland is the first place that we want to look to. I would mention Indianapolis in terms of, the use of and the acceptance of the single reversible bus only lane. But that opened about a year and a half ago. And it's just too soon to see new development at this point. And given everything that's been going on in the last year, that's kind of pushed off. But from a physical infrastructure point of view, as well as the work that they did with the neighborhoods, which are not all that different than in the center portion of Necklaceville Road, to accomplish that lane, is a lot went into that. And we actually asked the Indianapolis Transit folks to give us a virtual tour for the project team a couple of months ago, which they very graciously did. And that gave at least the consultant and our client team a good idea of what it took to do this type of thing. One other that I'll mention is Grand Rapids, a similar size city to Lexington. No big anchor at the southern end. They use bat lanes along the entire way. And I was up there a couple of years ago and talked with those folks, and they did not find that there was an appreciable impact on traffic flow because of the bat lanes, because most people who are driving in that curb lane are already taking right turns and left turns. Again, the idea was to encourage through motorists to get into the left lane.
And I just want to just mention real quick. So we're at about 10:50. I want to try to get us out as close to 11 as possible, but I want to make sure that we get everybody's questions on this. George, were you about to get in there?
I have a couple of quick questions, and this is just planning for capital. On the bi-directional lanes at the bus stops, do we need buses that have exits on both sides of the bus, or do the buses cross over to the left side at the stops?
To maximize flexibility, that's a good point, would be buses that have doors on both sides.
And then do we need to buy those longer accordion type buses?
Those would be the accordion or articulated buses. I've never seen a 40-foot bus with doors on both sides. It would take too many seats away.
But would crossing over to the left side of the bus stop eliminate the need for the door on the other side?
If this project, to advance this project, there would be, as Ann was talking about and I mentioned earlier, a lot more investigation in terms of the design, in terms of how that would work. So it may be possible to do that. Where I've seen some systems with the single lane, and what they do is that the buses cross over so that the door stays on the right side. That is possible. It's safe. So those are some of the treatments that in a more taking it to the next level of investigation and design that we want to look at.
Okay, and then who bears the cost of the parking garages at the catalyst sites?
That discussion hasn't happened. We're at the concept stage of this, so we really haven't. Both with when we've talked to the owners of Fayette Mall and some of the other catalyst sites, we did not take in this project was not meant to get to that level of, okay, exactly how we would fund some of the pieces of infrastructure like that. But undoubtedly, things like that, what you saw at Fayette Mall was a very grand vision, are something that typically is not implemented in one fell swoop, but it's done incrementally. But in terms of funding streams, we have not investigated that as part of this project.
Thank you.
Any other
I see
questions?
Jamie has her hand up.
Hey, Jamie.
Thank you. So this is more of a question, big picture question, and maybe to the planning, Kinsey. So imagine Lexington, the goal was to optimize corridors. Is this type of plan going to be replicated on other corridors, or is this very specific to Necklaceville Road? Or do you see something like this when we're thinking big picture to also be planned for Versailles Road and Winchester Road?
Our goal is to do an in-depth study of each of the major corridors through Lexington. The treatments and the recommendations may differ from corridor to corridor. I think that much of it will be replicable, but not necessarily applicable to each corridor. And just for your all's information, the next corridor that we're looking at studying is Northeast New Circle Road through the signalized portion, doing a combined land use and transportation plan for that area.
Thank you. So that could be something for us to be thinking about big picture. Today, we're just focusing on Necklaceville Road. This similar type study will be coming on other corridors.
Right. And each corridor may not necessarily recommend bus rapid transit. Part of what we were building upon on Necklaceville Road was the alternatives analysis that was completed for improving transit along the corridor in 2014. It recommended similar treatments that we investigated as part of this study.
Thank you. And then I also really appreciate, Jill, your comment on big picture. We should be focusing on, the conversation between ridership, that high frequency service or coverage. And what I heard was a ride every 15 minutes. What right now is our length? It's 40 minutes?
Our current headway on Necklaceville Road is 20 minutes. That's our most frequent fixed route that we have in the system. There's more frequent service over in the campus area with some of the campus specific routes, but service along Necklaceville is approximately every 20 minutes on a weekday. We made that change a couple of years ago. And we realized pre-COVID, of course, an increase in ridership because of that. But, I know I said the coverage versus ridership question, but there's also a consideration that we have to give at some point about how do we measure or show our value in other ways. We can't just think it's ridership, because even if there are only a few riders, it's still very valuable to them in terms of job access and things of that nature. Not quite ready conversation today, but did want to kind of plant that seed in your minds.
Well, and thank you, Jill. That led me to my next question. Something that Tim said that sparked the interest is that there was that health line. And so if we're also thinking about a Necklaceville Road, that's where all of our hospitals are. And if I'm remembering, I think right after jobs, the second biggest reason is to visit the hospitals. And we have a significant part of our riders that use the transit system to get to the hospitals. And so we spent a lot of time talking about Fayette Mall, but I think also there's the conversation around all the hospitals are also off Necklaceville Road. I'm guessing that was taken into consideration.
Correct. And with, prospective stations at those areas as well.
And then the only other thing to point out, there was another question you said, Tim, about local funding. So is that Lextran funding? Is that city funding? Is that state funding?
Well, when I say local, I would say maybe better categorize that as non-federal. So, could be any source. But when you look at the federal program to build big things such as this, which would be what they call the small starts category, they would be looking for non-federal new starts contribution to the project.
So
they don't really care what the source would be.
To get to George's point, the Lextran's responsibility would really be the buses and the bus stops, but there would also be a significant part of funding that would come from state funding on reconfiguring the roads, striping, curb maintenance. Is that, and that may be more of a Fred or Jill question.
That would be our hope, would be that, you know, we could get state and local government involved in that, in some of the infrastructure improvements and costs. And Kenzie may even have some comments related to that.
Well, I would just suggest that we look to Louisville's Dixie Highway BRT line as an example, where they have a combination of federal FTA, FHWA, state and local monies to provide funding for the various aspects of the project, depending on the nature of the components that it's been sort of broken up into. And I think the state provided funding for a lot of the infrastructure related projects, and then there were FTA funds for more of the service related improvements.
Great point, Kenzie. Thank you for that. One thing I would also add to that is that I am, you know, we always see grants out there, like the New Starts and Small Starts, and capital improvement grants. You know, I don't want to say it's easy to get a grant for capital like a bus, but it's much easier to get that than it is to get a grant for operational costs. And really, you know, once it is built, in whatever capacity that might be, you know, the real consideration that Lextran has to take it to make is, what is the long-term operational costs of something like this? You know, that is an ongoing thing. That's not just the one-time purchase or change in the roadway to accommodate the shelter or the U-turn, or the less frequent cost of the purchase of a bus. You know, you have the operational costs that come every day.
Thank you, Jill. And then the only final question is, a lot of this public input was done pre-COVID. Any major changes or projections, or is this plan pretty much the same given the uncertainty of the economy, local funding, ridership, or that we just don't know?
We, you know, what we heard from the public from the pre-COVID and then post-COVID phases was pretty consistent throughout. You know, nobody has a good crystal ball in terms of determining, you know, how things will structurally change. I think everyone has a sense that retail, such as at malls, that type of thing, this accelerates the evolution of that. But it did not influence the outcomes of the what we're showing today and what will be in the report describing the overall concept. Other than perhaps, say, at the catalyst sites, less suggestion of retail and more residential, for which there's a lot of demand for in Lexington to begin with, especially along the corridor.
Thank you.
I want to ask one quick question of Jill. Sure. How many current buses do we have on the Necklaceville route at one time?
George, I believe the answer to that question is 5. Is that correct, Fred?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so we would be 1 bus less and improve the service.
It would potentially be. We still, you know, that remains to be seen specifically. But again, we're also recommending that minimal service that would serve all of the stops as they do now would still be maintained on the 5. So you would still have, perhaps, in addition to, say, around 4, that there would be 2 other buses providing the local service.
And am I right, Tim, that BRT buses tend to be larger than your traditional?
Yes. But we also take into account that with the treatments that are in the plan, that they're going to be running, you know, faster than current local service.
Sure. Harding, generally, that is a 60-foot articulated bus, generally.
Yeah.
Okay. The question I had, last question I had was related to that, which is, do we feel like this plan or this concept is scalable? Should we have the opportunity to reduce that headway from 15 minutes down to, say, 10 or 7?
And one of the things about looking at the bus treatment for BRT is that it is scalable, and it also can be, there are some options for incremental implementation as well. So, you know, when you look at probably the biggest piece of physical infrastructure, which is the mile or so of one-way reversible, you know, through the campus section, you know, you can still operate the service from end to end, but, you know, if that can't come in a first phase, you can implement it as well in a later phase. So it does go both ways. It's both scalable and it's can be done incrementally.
If there are no more questions, I just want to add one thought. That's not a question, just something for us to think about later. It's just, and it may be from my ignorance. I'm just thinking when I hear the description of the different lanes and how they'll maneuver from segment to segment, I feel like it has some impact for even our drivers. And so I'll be interested in this perspective from operators as we dig deeper into this process. I want to say thank you to Tim and Ann and Kenzie for joining. I think we do understand that this is you know, an iterative process, but are definitely grateful for y'all keeping us abreast. I feel somewhat edified, affirmed, given the questions from the board for getting this back on the agenda, and just hope you all keep us posted.
Again, thanks for the opportunity to have the conversation to talk about the project.
Thank you all. Really quick, can we go back to the minutes? I think we got quorum. If everybody's got a chance to review those, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I'd move to approve the minute.
Is there a second?
George, second.
Everyone in favor, say aye or show a thumb.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Great, that motion carries, and then we can move, I believe, to the performance report.
Fred, before you get started with the performance report, I did want to make one comment to the board. This would probably be better before the finance report, but at last month's board meeting, you all voted that we would pay off the long-term note with Fifth Third. And I did want to make you aware that we had done that. We did that last week, so that has been taken care of. However, that is not reflected in the financials that Nikki will report to you here shortly. You will see that next month. But I did want to make you aware of that, had shared that with the chair of our finance committee. And with that, I will turn it back to Fred for the presentation of the monthly performance report.
Thank you, Jill, and I will get through this as quickly as I can. Let's see. First, oops, never want to skip the mission statement. We got to do the mission statement. We serve our people and our community with mobility solutions. So for January, maybe one of the biggest hurdles that we crossed was fare collection. And we've talked about that over the past several months. We were able to get that resumed on the 31st, and included in that with all those other things that we needed to do, including past sales, training, those sorts of things. So that was a big step. Things have gone well so far. I'm sure we'll have more to report on that next month. The second round of the coronavirus relief, the first one was the CARES Act. The second one's called CARISA, Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act of 2021. We were appropriated a little over $5.2 million as part of that act. Our general manager, Jill Barnett, was invited as a speaker to the annual conference of Kentuckians for Better Transportation. Our training department was busy. Sexual harassment and implicit bias training was conducted for 150 employees, and that was a continuation of some training that started a couple months back. So now all the employees have gone through that training. Training department was also on top of the refresher training for our fare box. So 111 operators went through refresher training to make sure that they could use those fare boxes effectively. We had an additional 66 trust and transit pledges in January. Yes, sir.
Quick question: the implicit bias, is that with McBrayer? Or is that
yes,
internal or okay?
That was McBrayer.
Thanks.
We had 66 additional trust and transit pledges in January, so the total is now 304. It's looking like we'll have a big month of February for those pledges as well, so we'll take a look at that next month. Our ridership is the same sort of patterns that we've been talking about for the past few months. You know, we expected a bounce from December to January. We saw one. It might have been a little less than what we would have expected, but again, the same sort of pattern is holding true. That goes for paratransit as well. And to look at that in terms of change relative to monthly average, we're still bouncing around between 40 and 45% on fixed route, 25 to 30% on paratransit. That's held consistent for the last several months. As you see, February of 2020, that's going to be the last month that we have sort of the traditional before COVID data. So things are going to start to look a little bit different on this chart. And as Jill mentioned before, you know, this could be an opportunity that we look at. How can we show and demonstrate this value to the community in a way with ridership, but with some other metrics as well. Our system productivity follows the same patterns that we've been seeing. Ridership down, both fixed route, paratransit, revenue miles down, productivity down. It's just following that same path, same trend. On safety, we're happy to report that we've had 0 preventable accidents on the fixed route system. Our injury frequency rate and workers' compensation claims, we saw a tick there because of some weather-related factors we had back in January. So we're a nice event that we saw some injuries due to the weather. Keep that in mind as we move forward. I've got a slide coming up in a minute that's going to be important. Maintenance, we've been tracking preventive maintenance inspections. We are still a perfect 100% for the fiscal year, so we're up to 309 in a row. So that's very happy to report that. Another big hurdle for maintenance in the month of January was the fare box testing and repair. They were able to get us up and running, make sure things have gone smoothly throughout, you know, to get in preparation, and then these last couple of weeks where we've had fare collection in place. A quick ramp update as we wind down the first phase of the ramp program. We've had 10 stops here. Some of those were started in December, but finished up in January. Shelter at Costco and Polo Club, the shelter there with our partnership with Amazon. So things are starting to wind down with that first phase. You're going to be hearing more about the second phase in the upcoming months. And so I'm going to cheat a little bit here on this slide. You know, normally we talk about things that happen the month prior. So we're talking about things in January. Well, this slide is about the past couple of weeks. And I do that because if we do this in the middle of March, talking about February, it's going to be 75 and sunny outside, and everybody's going to be having a great time. And we're not going to be thinking about snow. Since this is the top of mind, I wanted to go ahead and give you a quick update on what we've been working through for the past couple of weeks. So we did have a 2-hour service delay on February 11th. Snow plan has been in effect 11th and 12th, and then again on the 15th through today. So what happens when a weather event like this is predicted? Staff from our risk management and operations department will be on the street 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning to evaluate what's going on. They have contacts with Streets and Roads. So it's really a collaborative effort to see if we can safely operate in certain places of the city where we would normally run service that might be treated later by Streets and Roads, or that might have some topographical reason like a hill or a curve that we can't safely make if the conditions are poor. So we start early. We make decisions on snow plan or not, or delay of service or not. That information is passed to our community service and marketing team. They get the word out, and as you see this third bullet, Facebook page views increased by 550% last week, and the post where we announced snow plan for February 15th had a reach of nearly 4,000 people, and that's pretty cool to see. The fourth bullet is a very big and important one. As I told you to remember, we had some injuries based on an ice event back in January. So far, at this moment, we've had no preventable accidents or employee injuries in operations or maintenance due to this weather we've had the past week or so. Some of that is because of changes that were made. We've got snow cleats, different safety things now that's helped us avoid some of those accidents and injuries. Winter weather is expected to continue through this week, so we're going to be on top of it. We'll keep you informed as we go. But yeah, I wanted to kind of get this in front of you while it was top of mind in February instead of waiting for next month in March.
Fred, I would say thank you for that. I would also say you are optimistic about your weather forecast for March, so I like that. But wanted to take this opportunity to publicly say thank you to our operators. I know they probably won't see this, but I do appreciate very much the fact that you know, and our maintenance department. I don't need to forget them. Appreciate that they have all been out there despite this weather. That we have had no preventable accidents or employee injuries. That is awesome, given the weather we have had in the past 2 weeks. Also, a big thank you to John Givens, Jason Dial, Chris Withrow in our maintenance department, as well as the folks in our community relations and marketing who have been up bright and early, assessing roads, sending things out to the media, to the public through our social media channels. It's not easy to wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning and compose a coherent message about service, but they have all been doing it. They have been out there assessing and working 12 and 13-hour shifts. So I appreciate that very, very much. Those folks doing that is what keeps us running and being able to serve the community and show our value. So thank you for that.
And if there are no further questions on this report, we're ready to go to Nikki for financials.
Oh, yeah, I have a
I have
question,
one.
observation. In your graph, it shows, last month, the current months to what, the 3-year running average or the 5-year running average? What is it? The line graph?
It's the last 4 years.
It's 4 years?
Mhm.
It seems that our catching up to our historical experience seems to be slowing down, possibly even going the wrong way. Is it possible we're not going to get riders back to our former levels?
That is certainly possible. I actually saw a survey that was done out of Utah. I think the survey was conducted back in October, and they found that 40% of the riders that they lost were not going to come back. That's not perfectly apples to apples here, and but that's just a data point to say that maybe it's going to be slower than we'd hoped. So that's something that as we get vaccinated, as we start to open up, we're not going to know the rate at which people are going to come back until those things happen. I'm expecting and planning on it being much slower than I hope.
Okay.
One consideration for that, Rick, that the industry is kind of talking about is that a lot of the folks who use transit to get to their jobs, some of those jobs may not be returning, or the way in which people do those jobs may differ. So that is one consideration that we have to keep in mind as we think about whether or not we will gain those riders back.
Okay.
I have a more prosaic question that may sound silly, but that matters to me. Do we shovel all of our own stops?
Not all of them, no. We there are a number that we hit, particularly like on state roads and things like that, where the snow gets built up a lot more than on say a side street. We hit as many as we can, but with nearly 1,000 stops throughout the system, obviously we cannot get to them all. And where a bus stop is just a pole at a sidewalk, say in front of a business or a home, that would fall. The fact that the stop is there doesn't change the sidewalk responsibility for the resident or the business owner, like you or I might expect in front of our house. Where there is a shelter or a passenger amenity of some sort, we try to hit those first.
Got it. Thank you.
Jill, as a follow-up to your comment, there was a really excellent presentation by an economist to the city council recently about the types of jobs that were lost and the types of jobs they don't predict to come back to Lexington. I wonder if we could get a short summarized version of that as we're thinking through long-term, to Rick's point of and to Fred's point of what long-term ridership looks like. It looks like it did increase, if I'm reading it right, 5%, but still down 45% below average.
Thank you. That's a great idea. You said it was pretty recent?
Yes, I can follow up. It was the last budget and finance council meeting.
Okay.
Working to project city revenues out and working with an economist.
Do we have any more questions from board members about the performance report?
Let's move to financial.
All right. Nikki, are you available for the financial report?
I'm here. Good morning.
Thank you.
We will look at the balance sheet. The balance sheet, as Jill mentioned, for February will look a little bit different. We did pay off the loan on February the 10th, and that was $4.2 million. When you're looking at this balance sheet, you'll see the operating cash is much higher than usual. That's because we've drawn down $10 million of the CARES funding, and we will reflect the loan payoff in the next month. So if there are no questions about the balance sheet, we'll move on to the revenue and expenses. Okay, as you can see, our property taxes are running pretty normal. We're a little higher than we were last year. We did receive some money in this past week also, so we're right on schedule on where we should be. Passenger fares, you'll start to see that come back. We did start pass sales the week before the fares were taken on the buses, so that's reflected there. And this also includes 1 day of the fare revenue. We've seen that come back, steadily with a lot of passes being bought. We've had a lot of luck this time with some online passes, so that's very helpful for us and the passengers. We also are under budget in all of our expenses except materials and supplies, and as I've mentioned in previous months, those are for a lot of that's for our supplies that we've had to use for PPE and things like that, and we have been reimbursed for a lot of those with the CARES money. But everything else, we're looking under budget at this time, and we're very, very pleased. We're right under where we were this time last year, so I'm very happy about that. But I'll be glad to take any questions that anyone has.
Nikki, 2 quick questions. What's the other revenue category? What's in there?
That includes the UK contract, and it also includes things such as state fuel taxes. We get part of the fuel tax back, but most of that's UK revenue.
And the other one, we're under budget, but just significantly under budget. The fuel diesel, is that just a timing thing, or do we just less fuel?
We actually budgeted because it's very hard to predict a year in advance what fuel will be, but we did stick with the same budget that we had in the previous year, and it has been lower. We have seen an increase in the last few weeks, but it's not been. I think we budgeted $2.20 a gallon, and we've been running under $2. So at this point, we're still in good shape with the diesel.
That makes sense. And then the Parrot Transit.
That's our Wheels contract, and their ridership is slowly increasing, as Fred mentioned on his report. We are still under budget with them, but we have had the back in the summer and fall we had the shuttle service, so we subsidized them a little bit with the when they provided the shuttle service for us. And but their ridership is increasing a little bit. We are still significantly under budget in that line item, though.
And so is the amount we pay them tied to ridership?
Yes, it's per trip.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
What rider feedback did we get when we started the fares again?
I haven't seen anything negative. Fred, would you like to weigh in on that one?
Sure. Yeah, we've seen, of course, we did a great job of getting the word out ahead of time. I think that helped smooth things out more than anything else. We had a couple of instances of, passes not working that we had to clear up, but for the most part, it's been fairly smooth. I don't know that there's been any, why are we doing this? We shouldn't do this. I don't think there's been any of that.
There have been has been a hateful comment here or there, but nothing overwhelming.
Thank you.
Okay, does anyone else have any questions? Thank you all. Stay warm.
Thank you, Nikki. No action items today. Any new business? Proposed agenda items?
Not a tremendous change in proposed agenda items, but we will have a comprehensive operations analysis update coming pretty soon. We will have a couple of resolutions coming in the next month or so for electric buses, some temporary charge stations, and possibly a battery replacement system for some of our hybrid vehicles. We have a handful of hybrid electric vehicles, and we haven't yet had to replace any of the batteries. Therefore, we were somewhat shocked at the cost to do so. So we will have a resolution or resolutions coming just to enter into contract with someone for battery replacement on those vehicles.
Right. No closed session. Is there a motion to adjourn?
George, motion.
Second?
Jamie seconds.
Harding, second. Jamie got it.
Jamie got you. All in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Thank you all. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you, board members.
Cool.